Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second Post-Grad Survival Guide podcast episode. I am Tom Kugler, your host. Today, we get to talk to a very interesting person by the name of David Kadavy. He is the founder of the Love Your Work podcast on iTunes that has gotten 500,000 downloads since its beginning 2 years ago. He's had on amazing guests such as Seth Godin and James Altucher, and one day, maybe even me. No, I'm just kidding. Probably not. Anyway, so we are here with David Kadavy today. He has lived a very different lifestyle than what a lot of people might be accustomed to. In 2002, he graduated from Iowa State University with a degree in graphic design, and for the following 5 years after college, he kind of just worked a lot of different jobs in graphic design, moved into a lot of different places before settling in San Francisco in 2007. In July of 2007, he actually decided to start living a lifestyle a little bit differently than the one that he was living. He wanted to create this kind of life where he could make money passively while pursuing his passions and pursuing his curiosities. So, one of the craziest things he ever did was in 2011, he made $60,000 from an online dating site, dating advice site, I should say. And what he did with that site was it started ranking so high in the Google search results that people would visit his site, they would read his advice, and then they would sometimes make a profile on Match.com using his promo code. For every person that used his promo code, he would get a commission off of that sale. So essentially, he was making money without doing much of anything. People would visit his site because of Google, they would sign up for Match.com with his promo code, and then he would just be making steady commissions every single day, while he was working on other things. One of those things that he was working on was a book by the name of Design for Hackers. That book actually ended up making it into the top 20 best-selling books on Amazon and actually held the number 18 spot for quite some time. David is writing a book right now as well, and it should be out sometime soon. And writing has kind of been his forte for the past couple of years or so, hence why he has 32,000 Medium followers and is really just kind of a juggernaut on that platform. I'm quite jealous of him as well as Tiffany. Yes, David has done so many awesome things, but what I want to get down to is his personality and his particular outlook on life. One of the things he wrote in a recent blog post was, "I now know better than ever the forces of heart and intuition. They'll lead you to do things that don't seem rational. They'll make you pass up opportunities a rational person would take. They'll make you take risks that don't make sense at the time. By the time you discover why, it's too late to go back." This is David's personality. This is David's perspective on life, and I think you're really going to enjoy listening to him and what he has to say about careers, passions, curiosities, and just living an amazing, meaningful life. So without further ado, I just want to remind you to hit the subscribe button, and after you do that, you're free to listen to the rest of the show, but only after you hit the subscribe button. Okay, guys, hope you enjoy. Bye-bye. Okay, so I am here with David Kadavy. I found him on Medium recently, and he is kind of, like a juggernaut on Medium, I would say. He's got 32,000 followers, right to the mission, and also Startup Grind sometimes. And I found him there, but he's also done a lot of other amazing things. He's also the founder of the Love Your Work podcast, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, but that has 500,000 downloads. Is that right?
Yeah, we just passed the 500,000 download mark. Now, total over the almost 2 years now.
Wow, that's incredible. Another thing is too, you've had Seth Godin on and James Altucher. Anybody who, is online and just takes a look at the bookshelf in the business section at Barnes & Noble will know, who Seth Godin is. And, that's kind of incredible. And, I'll move along too, is you've also written Design for Hackers back in 2011, right?
That's right. Yeah. Came out then.
I've looked back at your story. It was really amazing for me to just research that the past week. So you went to school for graphic design. I wanted to ask, it says that you also kind of studied Roman typography when you were in Rome. Did you study graphic design in its entirety, or were you kind of specifying in a certain aspect of graphic design like typography or, you know what I mean, in college?
Yeah, we were studying graphic design, but it was a very uh, it was a program that was very emphasized concept a lot. So it was a very classic sort of classical program. I mean, we were working on computers. That was relatively early days of computers being taking over everything in graphic design, and the internet and web design was starting to merge with regular design, but the emphasis was really on concept. And I think that that was one of the valuable things that I got out of it, was just to think about constantly trying to push for originality and trying to communicate things in really indirect ways that you do with design. But then also when it came to typography, yeah, I did go to Rome, and that was where I discovered I mean, like, I didn't discover it, but that was, as far as I was concerned, that was the first time that I discovered the origins of typography, and whether it was what the inscriptions on Trajan's column or the inscriptions on the Colosseum in Pompeii. Uh, it was just so fascinating to me to see the origins of the letters that that we use today, and understand the way that they historically came to be. And that was a lot of the fascination that went behind uh, some of what was unique about Design for Hackers.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. It's funny. I was watching SNL a couple weeks ago, and they had uh yeah,
Papyrus, right?
papyrus. I was gonna ask you about that. I was like dying at that because I took a graphic design course in college. It was one of my electives. I was very interested in it, and I thought, maybe it wouldn't be as difficult as some of my other classes. But what I realized, and what I think everyone needs to realize about right now, is that it was like the toughest course that I took, like one of the toughest courses I ever took in college at all. And maybe that's not like typical of graphic design at all and at other universities, but at mine, this was just so intensive. You have to really think about what you're putting on the screen on a deep level. And some of these I've just watched, like students that were actually graphic designers and their projects, and I was looking at what they were doing and I was like, wow, like this is not just, I don't know. I don't know what I thought of graphic design before, but there's a lot to it. There's a lot more to it than I thought. And I think we watched a documentary on Helvetica or something in my first class, and I was like, wow, it's like it's all around us. Like graphic design is all around us, and it's not just movie posters and stuff like that. It's everywhere.
Yeah, like many things, it is like many things in day-to-day life, it is endlessly complex, and there are many people who dedicate their entire lives to understanding it. I think for one reason or another, graphic design is one of those things that over the last couple of decades, more and more people have caught on to that fact.
Yeah, yeah. It's I don't know. I actually really enjoyed my time in that class. I learned a lot, and it's helped me today. I made a magazine a couple weeks ago, and I like used some of my design knowledge, and it's far from amazing, but it worked. For the time being for my audience. So I think they like
Sometimes
it.
that's all you need.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we're into college now. I wanted to ask, what was your general college experience like? Did you really feel like you had a solid grasp on who you were in college, or were you still kind of figuring it out?
Oh gosh, no. Goodness, no. I didn't really know what college was. I'm not exactly sure how that happened. I mean, I guess my brother went to college. He was 3 years older. My parents went to college, but they had gone to, I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, and they had gone to a local school. So it wasn't like your typical go away and live someplace for 4 years type of experience. And so when it finally came time for me to choose a college, I remember, my mom being like, "You should try to choose a college now," and and that was kind of it. And everybody else was picking colleges and stuff, but I just didn't. And maybe this is true of a lot of people. I just didn't understand what the experience was. It was just, okay, this is a thing I do after I go to high school, and there's probably going to be lots of drinking and partying going on there, and hopefully I'll meet lots of girls or something. But beyond that, I don't really know like what it is. And so I ended up choosing um, the complete wrong college for myself, and part of the criteria that I chose the college on was, well, one, it wasn't the school that everybody was going to high school with was going, because I didn't really fit in. I didn't really like a lot of them,
Yeah.
and then two, it had a decent commercial art or graphic design program. It had a good reputation, and then the third thing was I wanted to try out for the golf team. I was obsessed with golf at that period of my life. I had played in my high school team. I was not very good. I had no chance of making a college team, even at the dinky little college that I went to. And so I picked this college, and it was in the middle of Nebraska. And for people who, especially coasters, people who are from the coast, oh, like
Yeah.
you, it just they've just figured Nebraska's just all dirt roads, and there's no electricity, and there's just tumbleweeds all over the place. But I was from Omaha, which is, it's a decent sized city. Roughly half the population of Nebraska lives in
Yeah.
Omaha, and Omaha's all the way on the east side, and then there's the just nothing, almost nothing for the rest of the state. And so I went to a school in the middle of the state, and uh, it was my first experience with culture shock. Was that I just got in a car and drove 2.5 hours, and all of a sudden I was in this completely different place with everybody had grown up on farms, and they were from graduating classes of 9 or whatever, and they were like, "Oh, you're a city slicker," and everybody's listening to country music and chewing tobacco, hunting raccoons for entertainment. So that didn't work
Yeah.
out. So after 3 semesters at that school, I transferred, and this time I transferred to a school instead of in the middle of Nebraska, in the middle of Iowa. Now, it might surprise you if you haven't been to the Midwest that was actually a completely different
Hmm.
experience. It was better. It was a bigger school. They had a very competitive graphic design program, and it was better. I look back on it, and I do think that it was a little bit of a missed opportunity. If I had understood a little bit better what college was, what the experience was, and if I had been a little less afraid of going further away from home, that I could have had an experience that was a little more ideal for myself. Now, the Iowa thing was fine. I got to do the study abroad in Rome and everything, and that was all cool. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't well until after college, I think, that I begun to discover who I
Hmm.
was.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a. I have been out to the Midwest, and I haven't spent that much time though. I've just driven through it, which isn't really going out there,
What you usually hear, yeah.
And I've driven out. I've driven through the Midwest twice. I did a road trip last summer and went out to San Francisco and hung out with my friend there for a while, and then I drove back, and then
Long
this
drive.
this yeah, I know. And then this past summer we did another road trip to me and my best friend. He actually flew over here, and he was like, "All right, let's do a road trip together." And then we drove right across the country, east to west. So, so I have been out there. We did pass through Omaha, and we got some Raising Cane's because that's like our favorite. That's like one of my favorite fast food joints ever. That next to In and Out,
Oh wow, I
and
never even have heard of that. Usually people, if there's a fast food joint that they reference in Nebraska, it's Runza.
huh. Okay. Okay. What is that? Is that like
They make these. I think it's like an Eastern European thing. I don't know what they would be called in that context, but a runza is basically like ground beef or something, enveloped in bread.
okay. Okay.
So it's like a pastry, like a meat pastry of bread in a way, like a jelly donut, a long jelly donut of bread with meat in it.
I see. I see. Okay, that's very cool. If I'm ever out there, I'll remember that, and I'll have to go get some of that. I'm always like very interested in I've been getting into food more, so maybe when I'm out there, I can get it again. I'm sure I'll be out there
People go
sometime.
nuts for it. I remember people being. I remember working at a place where we had an office in Iowa, and I believe that would be when people be like, "Oh, if you're coming to our office, can you bring me a runza?"
Oh man, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, well, I'll have to try it. I'll have to look out for it next time. I'll be out there again soon, I'm sure. Um, I like road tripping in the in the United States and anywhere. So I wanted to ask, after college, what did you expect life was going to be like, and maybe how was it different from what you expected?
After college, I expected that I was going to become a famous designer, and that's what I wanted. And by that I mean there was a magazine called Communication Arts, which I guess still exists, but I don't know what it's like in graphic design schools at this time. But when I was going to school, that was like the ultimate thing you could do was just get featured in this magazine. And so I would thumb through it and write down. There were different cities that I wanted to move to. I wanted to move to. I could go to Seattle or Portland or Minneapolis was a big place in the Midwest for people to go, or Chicago, maybe San Francisco. And so I
Yeah.
would go through it with a notebook and just write down all of the different firms that had been in that book, so that I could track them down and call them and try to send them my portfolio or my resume. And I even made a special trip out to Seattle to try to make contacts out there. And it didn't work. I was not able to get a job in any of those cities, and so I ended up back in Omaha. And I got a job eventually at an architecture firm, and I it was a good opportunity for the situation I was in, being in Omaha and everything. It was a pretty creative architecture firm for where it was, and I was given kind of free reign and had to start the graphic design department in this uh, architecture firm. Um, but I didn't have a lot of guidance in that. I didn't really know what to do, but I was just moving really fast
Yeah.
all the time. And actually, eventually, uh, actually, my first big print job out of college, I ended up getting in that magazine.
Hmm.
Now, and that was like you know, all my classmates. That was like the ultimate thing they wanted to accomplish, type of thing. And so it happened very early. It was really a career coup. I was very fortunate. A lot the stars really aligned and everything on that. But it was really, I'm thankful for that experience, because it wasn't what I expected it to be. I thought that was going to make me happy. Like, oh, now I'm a famous award-winning designer. And then I started to kind of look around at the people who were kind of making a career out of that. And I didn't really see the point in it. It didn't feel like I would be helping anybody, that I would even be helping my client necessarily, because a lot of the stuff that's award winning isn't necessarily practical. Like, it seemed like it would all be about like win awards, um, and it just turned out to not be the gratifying experience that I expected it to be. Um, Fortunately, and I think this experience of winning that award might have helped this along, but also making my blog and really putting my work out there so people could see it from around the world. Eventually, a um, a startup founder in San Jose in Silicon Valley
Huh.
kind of discovered me, and long story short, moved me out to Silicon Valley.
Yeah. Yeah, I love San Francisco. But still I know Silicon Valley is not really like it's south of San Francisco, but um
Yeah, San Jose is definitely not San Francisco. I did eventually make it up to San Francisco, but anyway, I was just excited to get out of Nebraska at the time.
yeah, yeah, I understand. I was excited to get out of I was in Orlando for a bit and then I drove across the country and San Francisco was like heaven to me. I was staying with a friend and it was just I don't know. I really enjoyed San Francisco. There's something about California that really appeals to me personally. Um okay, that's awesome. Thank you for going through that. I was wondering how the stars. I was wondering how everything connected because I knew kind of the things that you had been doing. One of the really cool pieces that you shared with us recently through your writing was like your last time working in San Francisco, and I'm not sure like what happened, whether you got let go or whatever, but you stopped working and you kind of like bought, what was it, like one of those tiles from Home Depot, and you wrote down your your plan for the future and everything, and you were just kind of like getting like eating microwave lunches and
If you like, I can put those pieces together for you, for the story that you're
sure.
talking about. Basically, the banquet meals. They were these frozen
Yeah.
dinners or lunches in my case, and you could get them at a grocery store, and sometimes they would have a special where you could get 10 of them for $8. So they would be roughly 80
Yeah.
cents, and they had Salisbury steak. I'm trying to think of that. They had like a beef
Yeah.
cutlet. They had maybe like a turkey and stuffing thing or something
Yeah.
like that. I would never eat those today. It would probably kill me if I did. I just have such a restrictive diet, probably because I ate so many of these
Yeah.
things. But when I was working at that architecture firm in Omaha, I was really just socking away as much money as I could in the stock market, um, trying to save as much as I could, thinking, okay, someday I'm going to have like a good nest egg and I can go out on my own. And so I ate them so much that I would be in the break room putting them in the uh, microwave. And there was this guy who kind of looked like a big chubby Elvis with kind of a concave face, and he would just come in and be like, "Oh, Kadavy, you're making your banquet meals today. Which one is it today?" And he would just tease me every single day about my TV dinner
Yeah.
meals, and I felt like I was in a scene of Office
Yeah.
Space or something. Now, fast forward to that would have been around 2004 at the latest, 2004, 2005, and then fast forward to me being in San Francisco 2007 and getting fired from my job. I mean, I say fired. Yeah, I think it like wasn't working out. I couldn't tell you exactly like what the
Yeah.
problem was, but I didn't really ask because I was happy to be on my own. And at that point, I had a nice nest egg. I had saved
Wow.
$130,000, in part because I had bought Google and Apple stock and made some good picks. So I was very very fortunate that way. And then I spent a year wandering around San Francisco from cafe to cafe, working on different apps and stuff. And then after that, I decided I needed some space. So I moved to the Ukrainian village in
Yeah.
Chicago, got myself a 2 bedroom apartment for the price that I had paid for 1 bedroom in a 3 bedroom apartment in San
Yeah.
Francisco. And went to Home Depot, and they had these big tile boards that you could use as a whiteboard. Whiteboards are like hundreds of
Yeah.
dollars. So I just bought one of these for $11, had it cut down, and that was what I would often just put on the floor and sketch out ideas. And that's where I kind of sketch out my plan. That what I was going to do was uh, do freelancing for 10 hours a week, spend the rest of the time trying to build
Mm.
passive income, and then at some point I would be free to uh, explore the things that I was curious about. And that's
Yes.
the plan that I've been carrying out for the last 10 years.
Yes. I love that. In I have so many. I have a couple questions to ask you. I'm going to try to make sure that I do it logically. I loved when you said that. I think you were writing about how you were sitting around with a bunch of friends and they were asking you like what you wanted to do, and you just basically were saying that you just wanted to like reconnect with your curiosity. You just wanted to do things that you were curious about and learn lessons from that, and then share your lessons with the world. I'm paraphrasing. And I wonder whether you kind of it seems like after you got let go, you kind of like felt this relief. I don't, and correct me if I'm wrong, you kind of felt this relief. You kind of felt like you were free to do a lot of different things, and you were putting money away and just doing an incredible job at that. And so was this idea of kind of like, doing whatever you want to do, being independent, being a freelancer, when was that, when did that set in for you?
I guess it came most strongly uh, after leaving that job 10 years ago
Yeah.
and waking up in the morning and I think a lot of people think that if they just had the chance, they would be able to follow all their dreams and they would be able to think of all the things that they could do. They could write a novel or they could start a startup and all this stuff if they just didn't have all this junk in the way.
Yeah.
But when you wake up in the morning and you realize that you actually have that opportunity and you just have space, uh, it's it's very it's more frightening than it is intimidating, or more frightening than it is exciting, because now you like actually have the opportunity. It's almost like you're trying to throw punches at some huge guy and your friends are holding you back. You're like, let me at him. And then they're like, okay, you know, like, uh, and so it was a little bit of a strategy in a way to keep myself from playing Guitar Hero all day.
Yeah.
Was that I knew I knew I didn't want to work for somebody else. I knew that to do so, I was going to have to work really hard. And in order to work really hard, it was going to help if I was working on something I was curious about or that I loved.
Mm.
And since I had spent the last several years working for other people and I had tried to find meaning in my work, I worked at the architecture firm, I worked at some startups, and that was exciting for a little while. Then I kind of tried to save the world in kind of like a quote unquote green startup. And that was a bunch of BS. And ultimately it was like, okay, I've tried all this stuff. I'll just work off of what I'm curious about and try to fill up as much of my day with that as I can. And so that's been an ongoing thing, because in addition to what I'm curious about, I'm still trying to find ways to make money, which isn't, those two things don't always line up perfectly. And so the scene you're talking about where I was with friends was about 2 years ago. There is a group of friends that I have gone to various tropical places over the last several years. Costa Rica, Nicaragua. This time we were in Mexico, and we'll just take a whole week, and the entire week is dedicated to just talking about, okay, what do we do? What am I doing with my life? Where do I want to go? What do I see the next steps as? And getting advice from one another on that. And so, it took that whole week to really come to the realization. I was a little afraid to say it, that, somebody said, well, what would you do all day if you didn't have to work? And like, I would read books and I'd have conversations and I would share everything I knew, and teach it to other people. And so that's kind of 2 years ago was when I really doubled down on that, is that I had enough of a base with courses that I sell through Design for Hackers, maybe a little affiliate stuff here. I've got a decent enough audience that I'm able to pursue that and not starve. I still haven't made it. I still don't think I've made it financially, but I've been doing that for the last 2 years, and that's about when my podcast was starting, Love Your Work. I mean, I had already started it. I had already started Love Your Work. So like the timing, it was like I was already doing the thing that I hadn't even realized yet that I had wanted to do. And then I just started working on a book idea, which I'm getting pretty close, is really starting to gel now, 2 years later. And so that's called Getting Art Done. And that's what I'm working on right now. So I feel like I'm on the cusp of finally making it.
Yeah. Well, no, I think you have, David. I look at you as a huge inspiration. One thing I wanted
Thank
to
you.
just really, yeah, one thing I wanted to just really, one thing I love that you just said was, you can't work hard. Well, like you work hardest at the things that you're curious, you're the most curious about. And I think that's something that we lose. I think we lose our curiosity a lot of times, and we kind of get caught up in a lot of different things. And the answer to this question might be a little more obvious than I think it is. Why do you think that we lose our curiosity so much? I mean, I think a lot of people just aren't happy because they're not doing things that they're even remotely interested in anymore, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's the rat race. It's the working world. And hey, let me be really realistic with you and all of your listeners here, which is
Sure.
that there's a lot of ways that you can go about making money, and there's a lot of ways you can go about making money independently. But when it comes to depending on what your curiosities are. When it comes to using your curiosity completely as your compass and making it the kind of artistic endeavor that I have made it over the past, when I graduated 15 years ago, uh,
Yeah.
that's been the most important thing in my entire life. I'm 38 years old. I'm not married. I don't have kids. You know, like this has been my life for the last 15 years. If I had decided to do those other things, I'd have to be making compromises. And so it's not easy. You kind of have to balance what do you want out of your life? And this is the thing that I've decided is the most important thing to me. Those other things still might come. Who knows? But this it was just I felt like I had no choice because I was just on fire to follow my curiosity.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I consider you someone that has a lot of different interests and has kind of I think you've mastered a couple different things. I think you're an amazing writer. I think obviously you know your way around design. There's a lot of other things. I mean, on like just making money online. I think that's an art in and of itself. That's something I'm trying to figure out right now. That's something I'm trying to, hopefully one day I'll figure that out. And But one thing I just wanted to ask was, I think what I think of like success or like loving your work, or what I mean, finding something that you love to do. I think I used to think of it as a destination. And now the more that I, look at everything and I live my life, I've come to realize that maybe it's not a destination. Maybe our curiosities and our passions are always evolving. I just wanted to get your opinion on that. Do you think that's in any way true, or do you think I'm way off base there?
Yeah, it's experimental. There's a book that I'm reading right now called Old Masters and Young Geniuses, and it's by this economist who's been studying painters. And his basic hypothesis is that there are two different types of painters. There are conceptual painters who they come up with a concept and they just go right at it. And they tend to be successful very early in life, but then they don't continue to have success. So Picasso would be one such person. He did his most important painting when he was, I don't know, 26, or if you look at when his most important paintings were done, that they were very early in life. I mean, he has an outlier with Guernica when he was, maybe in his 60s or something like that. But he didn't really do significant stuff that is in the art history books that the museums want, that go for high prices in auctions later in his life. He did very little of that. And his theory is that because that he was a conceptual painter, he kind of went at a concept. Now contrast that with the predecessor of uh, of Picasso, Paul Cézanne, who was this painter who just wanted to capture what he saw. And that's a complicated thing. I don't want to get into why that's different from just painting
Yeah.
a photograph, but he had a visual sort of vision of what he wanted. It wasn't conceptual, and so he spent his entire life. Uh, he spent his entire life chasing that. And you can even find there's a letter he wrote to a friend where he's like, I don't know when I'm ever gonna reach this. I always just feel this dis-ease because I'm continually pursuing this. And a month later, he died. And he peaked at 67. Like the later in life that Paul Cézanne did a painting, the more valuable it is, the more influential it is, the more you're going to see it in museums and stuff. And the more I'm starting to realize that might be the thing that I'm doing is that um, I do follow my curiosity. I let it take me wherever it wants to take me. It takes me all sorts of different places. I do keep on stacking different skills, but in doing so, I mean, I think of it like building a skyscraper or something. You've got to pour the foundation. You've got to like figure out and engineer what's the structure going to be like, and then once you figure that out, then you can start building towards the sky. And it just takes a lot of foundational work to get to there, and that's where I feel like I am. I feel like I'm very uh, close. I know
Yeah.
I mentioned in one of my articles that I'm comforted by stories of like comedians like Louis C.K. or somebody who they just struggle for 15 years. You can go watch his videos on YouTube from the early 90s, and like he really kind of sucked. And all of a sudden he started getting really good, but then it was still another 10 years before he really started to take off.
Yeah, yeah. I That's so interesting. I think that maybe the reason why a lot of college graduates feel a little uneasy after school is the fact that maybe they went into something that they were genuinely interested in. Picked a major that they're genuinely interested in when they started as a freshman. Then by the time they get out, they might not be interested in that anymore after so much time spent working on that.
Well, and then face this as well is that college is nothing like real
Mm,
life. Um, Now, that's yeah, college is nothing like real life. You're spending all day doing something where, teachers are. It's getting easier and easier. Teachers are sort of intimidated out of flunking people because college is a business. You want to get the tuition and you don't want to upset anyone. And it's not this thing like the real world where like you gotta do things to make money, and doing things to make money sometimes isn't pleasant. And in doing so, you have to like please certain people that you might not like. And there's not a ton of that going on in college. Not to say that college isn't like a really difficult time period of life, but it does very little to prepare you for what it's like to really try to make it in the world, especially this world. I mean, you can't just get the degree and then, oh, just go get a job and there you go. Like my dad worked at the same company for 37
yeah.
years. Um, that's not going to happen. I mean, I don't know if you want that to happen, but it's actually a really good deal if you think about it, that you can just go work at some company for 37 years and they're going to give you health insurance and all that stuff. But it's not for everybody.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I mean, especially with, I mean, I saw it firsthand. Like I was a marketing major, and by the time that I got out of college, I mean, they were just teaching like basic marketing, advertising principles. And by the time I got out, I realized that everything's changed. I mean, everything is social media now, email marketing. Um, and by the time you shift your entire course to a certain I don't know, focus, it's all changed by the time everyone gets out again.
But yeah, why bother asking children what they want to be when they grow up? Because by the time they grow up, whatever they're saying is like not going to exist. It's a totally different world. I guess I kind of wanted to be, I wanted to be a mad scientist. I guess I could still do that. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be a natural. I wanted to like study bugs and stuff, which I guess I could do that still too. But I certainly couldn't have predicted that I would be like a person with a website and a podcast. And I did some web design for a while, and I also write books and all the different things that I do to put together enough money to pay the bills.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. Oh man, okay, this has been awesome. Okay, so I wanted to. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, David. You've been awesome. You've been just provided a lot of great information and details and just a different perspective. One thing I wanted to ask was just so we can all understand where you are right now. Obviously, the Love Your Work podcast is going very well. Are there any other exciting things you're working on right now? I know that you're writing a book, so I just wanted to give you some time to talk about that a little bit.
Those are really the two things. The Love Your Work podcast is, in a lot of ways, I'm always learning what it is about, but I think that it's really kind of about my own journey of loving my work and the conversations that I have from the people that I read their books and learn about them, and then I share the essays of the things that I learned, and it's I'm trying to figure it out myself, and hopefully I'm helping my listeners figure it out as well.
Yeah.
And in the process of doing that, I also have those conversations with people that help me research for my book, which is Getting Art Done, which is about this process of doing this thing that only you can do, the thing that only a human can do, that a machine can't do, art, this thing called art, whatever form it takes, that is certainly pleasurable, but to really make it is inherently going to be uncomfortable. How do you do that without driving yourself insane? So that's the thing that I'm working on now, and I'm getting closer and closer every day to myself getting the book
Yeah.
done. and I'm so excited about it. I think it's going to be fantastic. If people want to learn more about it, they can, I believe, sign up for updates at gettingartdone.com.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, very good. Um, all right. I'll definitely be getting that. But one thing that I ask everyone that I hope to make a trend. This is episode 2, but I will be asking everybody this, and you could be as specific or as short as you want. If you could tell your college age self one thing, what would it be?
Don't listen to anything anybody has to say about what you should be doing.
Yes.
I spent way too many years living according to other people's templates about what I should be doing with my life, and that made me scared. And it took a long time to break through that fear. Unfortunately, I didn't have people around me. There weren't podcasts and stuff there weren't like leaders to look to or mentors to look to for me, especially living in Nebraska. So that was very hard-earned wisdom, and it's easier said than done. But that would be the thing: is that if something doesn't feel right to you, and you want to do something a different way, then try that.
Hmm.
Especially you're young, you're so much younger than you think you are. Uh, you have plenty of time to fail, and you'll learn from those experiences.
Yeah. Oh, that's the lesson I learned too. When I got out of college, I moved to Orlando a couple months later, and then my mom told me I should just get a job anywhere. I tried, and I actually started working at Panera Bread because I wanted to maybe become a manager, work in corporate. You know what I mean, and just work my way up. And my mom was like, "You need to do that. You need to be a manager. You need to, you know what I mean. That's the safe route." And I remember I just felt that was not the way to go at all. There's no bone in my body that wanted to do that.
Yeah, I mean, if you can muster the will to do that, it's a perfectly fine thing to do.
Yeah,
I envy people who can just work, and that I think there's a lot of honor in that. But
for sure.
if you just can't, then you can't. You got to do something else.
Yeah, yeah, and you got to follow that. And you got to, I'll follow that all the way till the end. Follow your curiosity and see where it takes you. Just like you. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and being so generous with your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Thomas. I think it's a great idea of what you're doing to help people who are in that kind of transitional period that that is tricky, especially these days.
That's for sure, David. Yeah, it is. It is definitely getting more and more tricky as we keep going along, and that's something I keep learning every single day as I post on Medium. That there's so many people out there that are going through the same exact thing. To get more of David Kadavy's work, make sure to subscribe to the Love Your Work podcast. Also, you can find all of his writing at kadavy.net. That's KADAVY.net. You can also find David at medium.com/Kadavy. He writes a lot of interesting content there about his general just day-to-day life, writing, podcasting, just a general mishmash of things. So he's a very interesting person to follow on Medium. That's why he has 30,000 plus followers over there. For any advice on freelancing/blogging, go to thepostgradsurvivalguide.com. That's where I post all of my tips and advice over my 2 years of freelancing and blogging that I like to teach everybody. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. Every Wednesday, we're going to bring on another amazing guest like David, and we're going to interview them about their life, post-grad, their general journey, and any lessons that they learn that they can pass on to you guys. So thank you all for listening so much. It's been an amazing first couple episodes to produce, and I'm just having a lot of fun doing this, to be honest with you, and I hope you follow me along on my journey. So okay guys, next Wednesday we'll see you again. Bye bye.